If you had a client come and say, "Hey, I have a $500,000 to do on ad spend," right? You could just be like, "All right, Facebook ads and Google ads and whatever." But whenever you're a startup and you have this, most of your money's going into tech and you have this little tiny marketing budget, you got to be creative and you got to come up with very unique things.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.
Well, hey, my name is Steven with the Death to Vanilla podcast. I have Ryan here with Entre. I was previously saying it terribly. And so I'm just excited to have him on board. He's the content creator for that company, and really deals with a lot of like startups and founders and kind of all that community there. And so I'm excited to hear from him today, but just because, like we talked about a little bit earlier before we theoretically hit record, that startups just have kind of a different way of looking at marketing. They have a different approach to things because they're new, they're not established, they don't have like a history of the way they've done things before. Maybe as individuals they have, but not as a company. So I guess to kick things off, I'll just kind of ask you the generic question. When you think of the word, like the phrase death to vanilla, what does that kind of make you think? What does that trigger in your mind when you think of marketing?
I think that kind of means just ending the bland, like the boring, and going with something kind of like out there, adventurous, bold, creative, something new and unique is kind of what comes to my mind. Even though I do like vanilla ice cream, but like changing it up,
Yeah.
kind of what comes to my mind.
Well, it's true. Everyone does love to hate vanilla, but especially if it's Bluebell vanilla ice cream, oof, that's just good stuff.
So. Exactly.
So everyone has a different definition of bold. What does the word bold mean to you when it comes to marketing? Like, where does that on the level of crazy?
I think it means like breaking the status quo. I think like really jumping out there. I think probably one of my favorite campaigns I've seen happen was actually that Taco Bell campaign, where they sold out tickets to their Taco Bell HQ where people could eat in person in like 30 seconds, and it got them an unlimited amount of press in like one night because all these celebrities were trying to get tickets to go to Taco Bell. I think things like that are some of my most favorite kind of marketing, like kind of bold marketing plans, because no one's trying to, go to Taco Bell. No one's ever going to reserve, but they kind of flipped it on its head. I think things like that are kind of my favorites.
Now, to jump into your history a little bit, I researched you a little bit in LinkedIn and saw you were actually a magician for like 10 years. So you have got to have perfected on some level, like the art of keeping people's attention, right? And so because that's literally like controlling even where they're looking is kind of like what goes into that. So how do you feel, like, first of all, how did that even happen? How did you get into being a magician? And how do you feel like that's translated into how you view marketing now, since it's still a game of attention?
100%. And for myself, I got in whenever I was like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 or so. And I saw like America's Got Talent or something on YouTube. I think it's America's Got Talent I saw. And then I just started just researching every YouTube video on how to do it. And then it ended up, if you've ever had like a YouTube spiral, like down the rabbit hole, just learning tons of different magic. And I'm also a hypnotist as well, which is a lot of fun. And I think for me, really whenever it comes to like marketing a startup, a lot of it's also networking, even more so than marketing, especially with what we're doing, because we're trying to get lots of like very niche, high quality entrepreneurs on our platform. So I think kind of with what I've done with Magic is really about being very personable and not being afraid to just, talk in front of people. I know there's a lot of people who don't like public speaking. I'm the total opposite. Like, you put me in a social interaction, I'll literally, my friends will lose me sometimes whenever we're out somewhere. Like I'll literally just start talking to random people. And I think Magic really helped with that and what we're doing.
Right. So that helped get you, not that you were in a shell to begin with, but you definitely learned to break out of it even more so.
Exactly. And also like kind of how to like, I guess, I don't want to say manage people necessarily, but like when you're in conversation, like when there's a lot of people and a lot of things going on, like where to put your attention, like you were talking about before. is really important. And then whenever it comes to marketing, I guess like it kind of makes you think of like how to be more creative, I think, because I think magicians are some of the most creative people because they want to make something seem completely extravagant outward, but on the inside, it's kind of like a little secretive, like little things are happening that nobody knows about.
Right.
There's a lot of different like creative thinking that goes into stuff like that.
Right. Okay. That's cool. So then, okay, so that helped you with your networking. It helped you with attention. And so now you're in this place where you're at Entre, and walk me through kind of like how you got introduced to them, and what kind of being a content manager looks like for them.
Yeah, so my freshman year of college at Penn State, which was spring of 2018, I was looking for internships, and I found one. We were actually called Me Group beforehand, before Entra, and I found that the founder at the time was 26. Now he's 29. He's super young dude in Pittsburgh, and I saw what he was building, which is like this social platform for entrepreneurs. And I was like, this is really cool. I didn't really know anything about tech. I didn't know anything about startups. But I joined that summer and I got to work with some like Carnegie Mellon interns, some University of Pittsburgh interns. And after that summer, kind of just like I'd spend late nights with our CEO, Michael Mara, and I would ask him questions that were like totally irrelevant to me doing content. And I'd be like, how are we going to raise funding? How do you raise funding? Who, like, all these ridiculous questions that were so far out of my realm.
Yeah.
And once I kind of learned what we were building and what the long-term vision is, I was stuck. I couldn't leave, and I worked for Entra throughout the school year, every single summer, and now I'm down here in Panama City with our CEO as well.
That's exciting. I love the so one of the I feel like the concerns that people have when it comes to the idea of like standing out and being bold is there's kind of like this fine line between taking it too far and then not being enough, right? And so like one of the people on my team, they had like looked up a ad that PETA did where they like had an ad that said like save the whales and had like some ginormous woman on the billboard, and like people were like super offended, and it was like, okay, like certainly that stood out, but in all of the wrong ways. If there was a line there and they were way past it. And so my question for you is from your experience, both from working at Entra and then some of the startups you've seen, how does someone go about evaluating where the line is for them and kind of juggling that balancing act of like different enough to be seen but not so crazy it's horrifying?
I think it's difficult because it depends on the company too. You know what I mean? I feel like one of the best ways, especially within like VC and tech, is really through Twitter right now. I think people kind of taking like little jabs at other competitors in their niche is probably a really good way to do it through memes. And that's probably something we're going to end up doing. I'm actually going to be probably hiring a chief meme officer here in this next 6 months or so. It's going to be somebody I'm looking for that's like really good that understands tech and VC and also is good at memes, which is a really niche person to find.
Oh, totally.
But that's probably one of the things that we're going to be doing going forward, because there's a lot of people that are like very very into that on the tech VC like Twitter. If you ever look up VC Brags, it's a very funny Twitter account. They just take screenshots of VCs bragging about investments they've made and make fun of them. And it has like 100,000 followers. So I think stuff like that is kind of like in the realm of where I think is a really good spot to be, because people love memes, they get them, easily shareable. But as long as you're not going across the line to like actually hating another company or a specific founder, as long as you're kind of like, I don't know, being playful, I think
Yeah.
it's art. You know what I mean?
Well, literally, what you triggered in my mind when you said that was Wendy's account. They're
Mhm.
just like, first of all, it's hilarious, and you don't really know if they really mean it, but it's kind of like one of those things where like it's just kind of fun. Like I don't know, they somehow have managed to still make it, like you said, playful, but they're taking
Uh,
some serious shots at like Burger King and like some of those, and dude, they are so funny to watch. But that's interesting that you talk about having a chief meme creator. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that I talk about is just continuing to like innovate with what is new. And so that's it's not like memes are like new per se, but like as far as the scope of marketing is concerned, you know, like billboards old, like
Exactly.
old memes in the frame of that frame of reference very new. Um so I guess my question is, you just I suppose if you were to kind of deconstruct how you got to that point, you just saw accounts that were doing really well and you were seeing some of the stats that went like for that, and that's why you decided to pursue that.
Yeah, I've seen some different accounts do it, and I've also seen like I think it also grows upon your brand as
Hmm.
well because it allows you to kind of like it allows you to grow on what your brand is because like we said with like Wendy's like their Twitter's like playful, fun, funny. If that's what you're looking for, like this is like golden. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think if you do it right, it's perfect. And then kind of like you found me through TikTok, right? With TikTok, it's all about pumping out like volume, volume, volume. And I think it's kind of similar with the meme situation because if you pump out enough of them, there's a chance that one of them is going to be super funny. It's going to hit the right people. It's going to be retweeted by the right people, and you're going to get tons of organic reach from these types of memes.
Well, and the funny thing is maybe I'm looking at all the wrong places, but I just don't feel like I see much of that from businesses. Like it is rare for me to see one from a business, which I think is phenomenal because what you're hitting on is like largely untapped. Like even
Mm-hmm.
business, there's not, I mean, there is kind of now, but even when I just started posting a video here and there, like there was not a lot of businesses on TikTok. And so it was almost like weird to show up like, hey, I'm at the party and no one else is here, because you know what I mean, like not many other businesses were doing it, and now it's definitely growing in popularity. And I feel like the meme game is kind of like that, where there's just like funny accounts that are posting memes, but not necessarily businesses who are leveraging that well. I know I'm certainly not, but now you got me curious.
Dude, I've seen a couple that have done it. I've seen like a couple dating apps that were like startup dating apps that were doing it,
Okay.
and a few other. I can't remember. Then I saw a job posting. I can send it to you on Twitter. I saw it on Twitter.
Do
Was a
it.
guy who was literally hiring. He posted like, "I'm looking for a chief meme officer." Like that's what the title was. That's where I stole it from.
Nice.
And he put that out. I sent it to all my friends. It was like, "Yo, you guys, here you go. Here's a job. Go get this."
Also me. Also I'm looking. No, that's really cool. And I feel like you've kind of hit on something a little bit there that I've been exploring too, which is this idea that certain places allow for certain kinds of um, temperaments, if you will, right? And so, like the memes, like clearly they're meant to be funny, and so then you have like places like Twitter, which are like, I don't know, and then like Instagram is very just like pretty photos and stuff like that. Although people are leveraging those well, like as far as where you guys are looking as a company to leverage, how what kind of temperament have you guys kind of landed on, and then how are you kind of expressing that with the different platforms that exist out there?
I'd say like so we're actually going to be kind of revamping some of our stuff for 2021. But I would say TikTok is acting almost like a blog in a sense, as in what people like news, things people are searching for. That's how like a blog is. Similarly, that's kind of what we're putting out on our TikTok. Is like every morning I read Crunchbase, like their newsletter, and I read all the companies that have the most recent fundraising rounds. And then I read
Hmm.
TechCrunch and go through and find the most important stories, and try to cover that on my TikTok. And then whenever it comes to Twitter, Twitter is very good for interacting with the right people because Tech VC Twitter is like one thing that most people don't know exists unless you're kind of in that scene,
Yeah.
and just interacting with people that are in your niche. I'm not sure if you've ever used TweetDeck before, um, but
I
it's
don't
a
know.
really yeah, TweetDeck is a really cool little site that I've used a little bit recently, and I'm probably gonna start using it more. It allows you to essentially like if you're on your desktop, you can have like 4 or 5 streams of
Oh yeah.
Twitter. You can be
Hmm.
like, I want this stream might be just all the tweets that have the word startups in it. This stream might have all the tweets that have the word venture capital in it. And if you do that right, and you have somebody who's pretty witty behind the computer, they can be responding to all of these people that are your target customers, right? And if you do that right, that's how you really can get the organic reach, and you're also kind of like touching a customer directly. You know what I mean? So it can work out well if you use Twitter right. I think Twitter is probably the most undervalued business platform. Other than TikTok is like on point. Like TikTok's super valuable and everybody knows it. But I think Twitter, if you used right with the right company, it's awesome.
Well, they're different in the sense that I feel like TikTok is valuable because of uh, how how much reach you're getting. Not necessarily that it's like the right people, although I'm sure you're connecting with some of the right people. You know what I mean? Like the reach is
Yeah.
just astounding compared to some of the older platforms. You know, like I've talked to people not every day, but often who are like, I'm out like on Facebook and Instagram. It's like the algorithm is just too hard. I can't afford to like even reach all of the people who actually follow me with content unless I'm like literally paying for it. So then, you move to TikTok and it's like, you post enough and you could be posting about like how to grow acorns and you would be popular if you posted enough videos. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I've definitely found my home at Twitter quite a lot. Like I've been really digging my heels in to go on it, and then I went on and it was like, people are here talking like normal human beings. This is awesome. Like I don't feel like everyone here has a facade. I don't feel, you don't have to have like the most beautiful, stunning picture ever created to try to get seen. It's just like you go on there, you're a person, you talk to people, and that's like totally my jam. And so it's just funny because like
Yeah.
for years and years I'm like, I'm not going on Twitter, and then sure enough.
I've had the exact same thing too. And I think the other thing that people don't realize is people are really accessible. Like on just what any platform, realistically. I think very high level people are 3 clicks away. If you have a phone in your hands, which everybody does, right? Someone who is way more experienced at whatever you want to do is 3 clicks away. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. Like I reached out to VC, like there was a VC who tweeted that he raised like a $20 million fund. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I looked into his fund. It's a social impact fund. I knew that their thesis didn't align with us, so they weren't even going to invest in us. But I just reached out and was like, yo, dude, tell me about your fund. And we had a great little conversation because I want to get into VC in the future. And it was super cool to just be able to reach out to somebody like that.
Isn't that wild?
And I think yeah, it's literally so crazy that you can just do that now. And I think people are taking that for granted, or they're just not taking up on that opportunity that's right in front of them.
Well, I like that idea that you said about having that tweet deck with those things open. I just recalled that I found that out the other day. I pulled it up. It was kind of a nice way to just be able to keep up with comments and stuff. But I had not used it yet, like you mentioned about having like specific hashtag feeds rolling in real time, because that's pretty slick. And like you said, for the people out there who are struggling to keep up with like, what do I make for content every day? It's like you said, you literally have something giving you all the information you would need to put your
Mhm.
spin on it every moment of every day. And
Exactly.
that's super valuable.
Exactly. It's super nice. But I definitely do want to find somebody who would be like perfect for it. It's just a very niche job, depending on like what your company is. For us, like it's so niche down with like startups, entrepreneurship, VC, tech, kind of like entrepreneurship as a whole, but business. We need somebody who's like really, really savvy.
Totally. Oh yeah, it's like, how do you make VC stuff hilarious? Like, aha, I invested. That's super funny. Like, but you know what I mean? But that's like, I what I need to do is I need to go on that VC brags so I can kind of get a flavor for that, because that's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, dude, they're a really funny account. Definitely worth following.
I mean, I love talking crap, so that's just wonderful. Um, so, from your perspective as a content manager, what's your process to be able to go through with this chief meme guy and be able to really give a framework for what kind of content? Because, like, obviously, you're not going to tell them what kind of content to make, but there's got to be some sort of framework that you're building that says, like, hey, like, it needs to kind of be like within these bounds. This is what we're about. How do you go about creating that framework for him?
I think it would really come down to a strategy. So I think some of the content, like, under the assumption that I find somebody relatively soon, I think the way it'd probably work out is like we would sort of have like a strategy session once a week, check in, and also go through some of like the overarching points that we want to get across. about who we are, what our advantages are over competition, over other platforms, and things like that. And then kind of, even if it's not necessarily, because I think there's kind of like two types of content where this comes in for the memes. One is just like super general. So like for what we're doing, for example, we're going to be rolling out voice rooms here in the next month or so. So we'd probably take a little jab at Clubhouse for fun, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the most timely relevant. It doesn't have to be something that's like, I don't know, on the new year or something like that, right? It can just be a scene from a movie that we could mesh into that to make a meme, right?
Okay.
And then that would be the first type of content. The second one would be something that's timely. So Slack and Notion just crashed the other day, so making a meme out of that, or the New Year's, making a meme out of that, like stuff like that that you can put, like you said, putting your spin on it would be golden. So I think that's probably the two types of content we'd go through, and I would try to get the person that I'd be managing to make a ton of that general content, like a huge library of it, as soon as possible. So that way we have all of that queued. And then as the timely things happen, we post the timely things when it's timely, and the general stuff can just be posted whenever.
Right. Yeah, I kind of consider that like the evergreen content where it's like it doesn't really ever get old per se, but it's also not super relevant either. So you miss that leverage, but you also have something that actually lasts for a while, which is always nice
Exactly.
because it feels like you post something and it's just irrelevant immediately, and it's like that's frustrating. I had to spend a lot
Yeah.
of time on that.
I feel like there has to be like a meme library with like data. Like I feel like there has to be like the most used memes by certain time periods. Like I feel like there has to be a database somewhere. I don't know, I'm gonna look into it.
No, that makes sense. I would say the only random thing I have about memes is I feel like um, I'm sure you've heard of iFunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I don't know who's doing their marketing, but their push notifications are so perfectly timed, it's insane. Like they just have them like so I used to have them, I don't anymore, but it'd be like it's lunchtime, snack on these memes, and it'd be like right at noon, and I'm like, how do they know? Like, and they would just like have them just like coming out at just like the perfect times, and it was like, dude, you guys are promoting content like just perfectly well, you
And
know,
that's
and
another part of what we're going to have to plan for too as we start to scale, because being a tech platform, so like an app and a and a web app as well, is making sure those notifications are timely and making sure that they're also valuable,
oh yeah,
right? I severely dislike whenever I see something, I get a Twitter notification like, hey, this person hasn't tweeted in a while. I'm like, I don't know who this is, right? Making sure that like what the notifications are, whenever you open up that notification, it's something that they get value from, and finding a way to do that systematically and having a strong process. That's going to be more on the dev side of things. It's going to be a mix between probably marketing side and dev,
right.
to put that together. But it's definitely something to figure out as we start to scale.
So kind of going back to the startups and the raising of the funds and stuff like that, what do you think is different about a startup that they're willing to try so many different new things? Like you guys are like newish, right? And you guys are trying all these cool things. Is that just because of the fact that they hired you and you're just adventurous, or is it the fact that like startups just inherently are more willing to try new things? Like, what kind of, in your experience, has been why startups seem to be so much more on the cutting edge of stuff?
Bootstrapping, because you're so low on funds. You know what I mean? If you had a client come and say, "Hey, I have a $500,000 to do on ad spend," right? You could just be like, "All right, Facebook ads and Google ads and whatever." But whenever you're a startup and you have this, most of your money's going into tech and you have this little tiny marketing budget, you got to be creative and you got to come up with very unique things.
Hmm.
And I think for that, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. So for one of the things we did, I wouldn't even say this is like necessarily like marketing, but it's sort of, it worked out to our advantage. So what we did prior to launching, and I think this is a really important thing to do as well, is one, we had a landing page, super simple, had it all over our social media, right? And then two, we hosted events for our community for the past 2.5, 3 years, right? So we were hosting events in New York, Pittsburgh, Chicago, DC, all these networking events for VCs, startups,
Mm.
founders. And what that did was that allowed us to build up a huge email list, a long texting list, So that way we could sort of really use that to our advantage and leverage as we start to scale. And also we're raising money on WeFunder at the moment, wefunder.com/Entre. And what we've actually been able to do is I've seen people come through the email list or speakers we've had at our events, and they're people who've actually invested in Entre.
That's awesome.
So, and it's been a really, really valuable way to do it. So I think building up an email list is probably one of the best things. I feel like it's something that people really overlook. It's not the most big, bold, creative thing I've seen, but I would say that's definitely a really big thing. I think it's something that's kind of different, and also events as a whole too, because events are great because you're actually face to face getting to know. I mean, pre-COVID face to face, but
Right.
getting to know your customers and who the people are, and you're interacting with them. Right? There's hundreds of people, thousands of people who've been to our events, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's Ryan from Entre," or "Oh, that's Michael from Entre," and they know you by name, which helps your brand as well.
Well, yeah, because you for at least a period of time have their complete attention, which is so difficult to do online. You're fighting, you know, 6 apps, what's actually happening in their life, TV, the fact that they're actually work while they're doing all those other things. And so it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, it's man, I miss doing stuff in person. I'm waiting for people to like actually start getting physically sick whenever people use the word Zoom. So, because it's going to happen eventually.
I feel that.
So yeah, no, that's really cool, and I think you're right about email lists. I remember I definitely like I'm starting to build one, and unfortunately, I started building right as everything started shutting down, so I didn't get to do events yet, and I'm looking forward to the time that they happen. But I started building email lists, and the whole reason I even started is because I listened to a podcast, and the guy was basically like, "What's the only platform that you can build an audience in where you own the information, and no one's going to wake up one day and change the algorithm and completely cut you off from actually like being in contact with them? Just email." And it's like,
Yep.
dang. And now, because you guys are on the community, right? The texting platform
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something similar to that,
Mhm.
which is amazing. That's like literally like the text version of an email list, and it's so beautiful because the barrier is so like you're already texting, and then you're just texting someone else on, and it doesn't matter that it's from a business, and it doesn't matter that it's from like some sort of service. You're still being able to talk to them, and I just think that's so valuable. And
It's huge, and it's very direct, and also your open rates are so much higher with texting. It's actually really cool because I've used it as like me signing up for somebody else's texting
mm-hmm.
community. Like there's a VC that I was a really big fan of and I've been following for a while, and I sent him a text and he actually responded. And I was like, "This
That's
is
cool.
awesome! Like this is so cool."
Yeah, I follow Gordon Ramsay, and so I'm just like waiting for him to like swear at me or something like that, just for fun. I'm an idiot sandwich. I know, right? It's such good stuff. Well, that's cool, man. What do you think is if you could encourage someone who's kind of been doing traditional marketing for a long time, what would you kind of go about do to convincing them that says like, hey, you know, it's actually worth trying these things. I know these are new. I know these things are not necessarily like scary, but just like untested. What would you say to like really start like convincing them to at least start looking at it?
It's tough. I mean, it does depend on what you're doing
Okay.
specifically, you know, and it depends on what your business is. If you're into the startups, totally even like beyond even marketing, it's more about networking because the thing here is like I love doing marketing stuff. I love doing content. I'm not good at Facebook ads. Not my forte, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to ready. I met a guy on TikTok who did ecom. Hit him up in his DMs. He forwarded me to his CEO who does all of our Facebook ads, and he's a beast. He's an
Nice.
absolute beast, right? So I would say if you're starting something right now, just meet as many people that are doing really cool stuff because you never know where it's going to end up bringing you. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then I'd also say just TikTok because pumping out content on TikTok has been so valuable for us. I had 8,000 followers like a month ago, and now I'm up to like 22. Like we said, like that one video that just pops off, I had a couple that just blew up.
Right.
Um, I'd say TikTok. And then I think beyond that, I know Gary Vee's been like talking about LinkedIn a lot, but
Yeah.
LinkedIn is not my favorite. Trying to think of anything else that's new that I'm missing out on. I don't know. I'm very curious. It really depends on what your niche is. I think gaming's going to be an interesting platform. I saw a founder. I forget where I met him. I met a founder who has this platform that is a advertising platform for gamers. So like if you're watching somebody stream, like a banner ad would come across the stream, or like if it was like a McDonald's ad, like Ronald McDonald would walk across right across the screen and stuff like that. I thought it was very interesting. So that could be something very unique. And also micro influencers is one of my favorite, or just TikTok influencers as a whole is probably one of my favorite things. And we're going to be doing a really big campaign once we launch 2.0. So be on the lookout for that on TikTok.
Sweet. No, that'd be awesome. You guys have been like just posting like mad on TikTok. So give us like some specific numbers if you're willing. I see you guys are going live like probably a couple times a week. And then so tell me how what's your like targets? Like how often are you guys planning on going live, and how much are you guys posting a week? Like just like regular videos, not live.
I would say it's between 7 and 20 posts a week.
Okay.
I do at least one post a day, and I try to get 3, but 3 is a lot. So it depends. If it's something that's timely, if it just happened, it's definitely going out, kind of like the strategy I was talking about before. If it's general, I try to build up a queue if I can. Ideally, want to get 3 out. I think today I posted 1 today. I think I got another one ready to go out later, 1 or 2. So that's sort of what I do. And then I try to go live at least once a day. It kind of depends. Like Christmas, I just took off from going live. I was just like, I'm just relaxing like this couple of days. But I try to go live like once a day at least. Like probably like I'll post like once, and like after the second post, I'll probably go live to try and boost them both.
Nice. No, that's super fun. I didn't even realize that TikTok did live for a while, and then I started people to start doing that. I'm like, that's pretty cool, actually. You know, like, did you find that like is there like a pretty good boost in engagement when you guys go live?
For sure. And also I think the other part of it too is I've got to actually like, after going live enough, there are people who specifically come into my life. Like almost every single time, I can guarantee like 8 to 10 people that just love being in my lives.
That's cool.
And they'll give me updates on their business too, which is super cool. They're like, hey, I just raised money, or hey, I just got connected with so and so, or the product's at this stage, and like people like love doing that. And the other part of it too is like I'm actually making like genuine connections too. It's wild. So I've gotten on calls with so many people from TikTok, and then on top of that, like the other crazy part is like I talked about the WeFunder campaign. A lot of those people who came into the lives and some of the people who followed me actually ended up investing in the WeFunder campaign. Like
That's
maybe
wild.
a few $1,000s came just from people from TikTok, which is absolutely crazy that TikTok has that kind of power.
Well, even if the number amount of dollars wasn't super high, which it sounds like it's still pretty good, that just signifies that there are people who are like truly invested and care, and that in itself matters so much. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. I think they see kind of like what the big picture is and what we're trying to build, which is really cool. And there's not too many there's only probably 5 creators in total that I know, other than myself, that are like in like the startup side of things, more so than just like general business or stocks or marketing. So it's a little bit more niche down.
Yeah. So what is something that you're like most excited about in 2021 when it comes to Entre or something of your own? Just like what are you most looking forward to?
I'm so excited for 2.0, because so like 2 months ago, maybe not even, we got this new UX UI designer, and the first time I talked to him was like, I don't know, not even a week after we had hired him, and I was like talking to him. He's like, yo, hey Solly, I like threw in new designs in the Figma, and I checked them out, and they were literally so crisp. Like the whole platform looks so much better. The whole thing's beautiful. It looks seamless. And I was really mind blown whenever he had just like whipped it up.
That's awesome.
which was super cool. And we're gonna have like voice rooms coming here soon as well, so you can just hop into rooms with other entrepreneurs, talk about venture capital, startups, marketing, literally anything you want to. And I think it's gonna help like this end-to-end networking solution, so you can easily network with other entrepreneurs. And then also we're going to be rolling out this feature that allows you to book calls like directly on your profile. And you can charge money as well, events. So we got a lot of really, really big stuff coming in 2021. I think these next 6 months is going to be huge. And I think once we roll out 2.0, a lot more people are going to go over to the WeFunder campaign too, because they see sort of like what we're doing. Because it's funny, because right now, like I've gotten lots of feedback and people really liked it, but we're still in 1.0, which is crazy that I've still got positive feedback even from 1.0.
Right. No, that'll be super exciting. That sounds like super, super helpful stuff. And this kind of makes me think that you guys are doing a good job of just keeping your ear to what people are actually wanting, which I think is huge when you're building something out. You know, most people, I wouldn't say most people, some people build things with kind of a lot of assumptions, and it sounds like you guys really have your, you know, ear to the ground, having real conversations with people. And then, because all of those things are just fantastic ways to start building your network outside of just, you know, adding and commenting. You know, to be able to book a phone call is pretty slick.
100%. And actually, like part of my role, I've been like the community manager as well. So like the past like month or two, part of my role has been getting on calls with people on the platform. So like my Calendly link is in my Entre profile bio. So like people in the community are booking calls with me. And I'm getting like really good feedback from them, like what they want changed, what they want added, all kinds of stuff.
Right. That's awesome. Well, sweet, man. Well, we'll wrap it up with that. And if you could just share how people can get a hold of you, and I'll probably coordinate with you as far as like actually having links in some of the profiles. But yeah, if you could just kind of like let people know how to get a hold of you and find you.
Yeah, so I'm at Sully Does It All on Twitter and Instagram. Ryan at Join Entre is my email, and then at Sully on Entre. Yeah, and I'm always down to talk to anyone who's doing some cool stuff, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is constant.